I would like to come through the audit and the pen testing part. So now you have the audit, and for the funny thing is that when it detects what is a backend database, it automatically loads different kind of audit and pen testing vector, because different database really has different vectors and the things that you need to audit. For example, the configuration, the weak passwords, what are the parameters that it's using, what are the users and the passwords, what are the privileges, and what is the version, for example, in backend. This is probably the first thing that we will be interested, right? Because, of course, SQL Server 2000 and 2005 will be different. 9i, Oracle 9i, and 10G will be different, right? So this is now we see if we're using default passwords, if it is how many privileges does it has, what's the SQL area, what's the version in the backend. This is probably the most first thing that you want to audit through this SQL injection, through this web layer. So, because later we will cover, even for the defense point of view, the best way is also defend the web application layer and the database layer. So in this sense, when you try to pen test and audit, when you do both two layers, it's also the best breed of bridge. So now see it also you can try some of the pen testing like escalation privilege and even get the backend server name. So for the SQL Server, that will be different. For example, the pen testing will be execute OS command, or you do something even for the much more like web shell things, and those many of the network functionality. So now we come back with the whole only purpose really is try to show that how quick right now that just one vulnerability like SQL injection that people can gain and make use of it to do the big disaster of the websites. And the matrix really has the cross database support and HTTPS support and the directed scan and proxy mode. Proxy mode is also very important, especially for some of the applications that has many post forms, things that you want to check in the reality, because there's many of the applications based on your in-house procedures. So you want to fill in the real data and go through the procedures and let the matrix do all the scanning and the vulnerability assessment in backend for you. So in that case, for example, one of our customer users use it in the in-house. It's a very huge company, 2 characters, start with H. So they use the in-house to just the QA will use it, and the QA will just browsing and doing all the functionality testing, but then the backend, the scanning and all these vulnerability assessment is going on. So there's a couple of highlights, the cross-database support, both directly scan and proxy mode, high performance, flexible pen testing framework, because you can add your framework in without changing the software, very low false alarm, and fully automated. So this is one of the graphs I liked to use before. That again, here is the firewall, right? And here has the open door, of course, for the HTTP and HTTPS traffic, and the web server. And now through this web server, you can gain all these database attack, sensitive application data, privilege, roles, authentication, data dictionary, OS file access, buffer overflow, and even denial of service. By the way, we did find the trend that the application layer denial of service is also coming up. I don't know if people here has a lot of concern on this part, but it's obviously after the originally, all these network layer, SYN flooding or UDP, wide, all these DDoS, the application layer denial of service has many advantages as well, because it just, from a simple wide, it just used out all your connections, and in many of the cases, the application could even almost die, and including the backend database in this part. So, and also because it looks legitimate, this kind of defense is also will be a challenge as well. So, parameter defense usually do little help, right? We already mentioned. So database is different, but there are things in common. So that leads to different kinds of secret injection, which is possible. Database has to maintain a lot of information, like many of the sensitive information, even inside the database or even in memory, that to keep it all working well, right? The more complex the database is, the more sensitive information that it has to maintain, the more data has to maintain. Harden a database is not so easy. So here's one of the pen testing sequence that we use. For example, we detect whether it's secret injectable. We will try to detect what is the real backend database type, and what is the database name and username that is used. What are the privileges? What is the backend data dictionary? And then you can do the advanced injection and the auditing through this point. There's many things in common about the database. For example, the versions, like V. version, Oracle LL version in SQL Server, and in DB2. So, because all the different databases, they all based on the basic database theory, right? Which we know that, for example, the data that manages the data, like all the metadata theory, all these default use and passwords, all these configuration, default configuration, and all these privilege-wide roles, this concept, right? Triggers. So this kind of concept, this kind of content and concept will also can be used during your pen testing purpose. Because if one feature, you can use it in the bright part, and also you can use it in the dark part. That's also one of the things, tick and tack, which is interesting thing always in the security world, right? So password management, right? Store procedures, ports, evil procedure and functions. I mean, not so evil, but it's a different kind of function that pretty much like a network function or the OS file function and the OS interactions, the things between the Oracle SQL Server and the DB2. So also student 9i and 10G and even the latest 11G, there's many of the fix plus fix among all the through, but there's always when the new version come up, the new vulnerabilities came as well. 10G did a relatively good job, like for the listener part, for its own management part, and for the quick, later on the CPU release. But still, there's a lot of left, actually, even with the latest version. 10G and 9 are using the same password algorithm, which is a weak malformed DES encryption without sort. In 11G, it changed this behavior a little bit, but there will be new, with this totally new version, there will be new vulnerabilities that you didn't see in 9i and 10G before. 2000 and 2005, I don't know how much people is using here. 2005 I think did some progress in the security part, especially on the default configuration. Doesn't enable a lot of network service, and also with the more granularity, the ACL controls. But from our pen testing, there's really not so much difficulty between these two. So it's only, a little bit progress from the security-wide. 2000, of course, that's pretty much a disaster. Even before, right? Everybody knows many of the default configurations, default package, which every hacker loves, right? So, of course, game upgrade to 2005 is the preferred choice, even though that the security-wide, the improvement is relatively really low. This is one of the report that we just mentioned of Magic. It mentions, which URL, what's the backend database, username, password, username and the database name, what's the table content. So all these you gain from remotely, just like a black box hacker testing does, right? And testing does. And also it has the scripted cross-site scripting. So, well, in short, it's really, I don't think I need to read more about this part. And we already saw them because I was thinking to put this ahead is a little bit better, even for the time purpose. So the next revision that we are already doing for a couple of months will be including with all the existing functionality, including AJAX hacking, actually AJAX pen testing, I'm sorry, because right now, as everybody knows, that AJAX is becoming more and more popular, including the big enterprise and the small corporations, home cooked all these applications. So this is one thing is really important. And of course, with a lot of other enhancements in for the next revision. So we'll probably have a preview revision, free release probably in November or December. So defense and audit tips. So application layer hardening is the key, right? It's really the root cause, because all these SQL injection and the cross-site scripting part, this is really the root of the root cause. And never trust the client-side validation, because this really doesn't work, right? Everybody knows. Even for the AJAX hacking, it is the same thing. Never trust the client-side, those JavaScript or those validation. So database layer hardening, from privilege-wide, from the more fine-grained the ACL to control what the application layer this user really can do. Many of the time we just grant too much privilege to the application user that it's almost a DBA, or it is just a DBA, right? So this is just not right. And also, of course, web firewall and doing the black box testing and do the database layer auditing is also important. So the 3 layers defense, 3-way defense. So a little bit introducing about the DB app security team. So we do the penetration testing, and we do all the defense and the black box testing products. The successful rate of pen testing right now is pretty much 90%. So it's pretty much some of the reference I use. And thank you for listening. I'd like to leave a few minutes for questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Frank. If you have any questions from the floor, And again, the best question from the floor will be awarded an antivirus kit.